Hey guys, Zack Marsh here, and this is my review of Kaitou Joke. Okay, so this episode is interesting in that we actually find out Roko's backstory. In this episode via most of the episode being a flashback, and also there isn't really a heist in this one. It's just lore. That's it. There is sort of a heist, and it's Queen and Roko's first heist together. Actually, we actually find out that they actually wind up stealing a diamond from a museum. They don't actually explain the details of how they actually wind up stealing the diamond or finding out about it. It's not even that important. It's just a big blue diamond that they find in a museum and decide to steal. But in case as they actually manage to wind up escaping and winding up onto the roof, they actually note that the moon is actually a perfect circle, and Roko merely remarks that it's exactly like that night. And it's at this point where we actually get an extended flashback, which is later revealed to be relayed as a story by Joker to Hachi. But long story short, this entire flashback is actually about the night that about the day that the other Phantom Thieves actually met Roko, and how they actually wound up working with him. And what we find out is that it was one particular couple of days when Silverheart was actually away, and he wanted them to actually kind of focus and continue studying, but obviously they both King and Queen actually remark that they'll be good, but Silverheart is a little bit more concerned about Jack, because obviously Jack is very rambunctious, and he has every right to worry about him, because when Jack actually stands up remarking that they'll do their best to actually study, Jack's book actually winds up falling on the floor, and Silverheart discovers that Jack has actually doodled in it. So he then tells him to actually take his study seriously, and also pulling on Jack's face while he does so, and Jack gets the message actually winds up getting through Jack's head, and but that Silverheart leaves, and then I proceed to do the exact opposite of that and remark that now that Silverheart's gone, they can actually play a little bit. And it's at this point where we actually cut to Roko at an unknown facility, and we actually find out that initially Roko didn't have a name. As we find out, Roko was literally just referred to by his experiment name, number 101, which is just the number that the scientists who made him gave him. And we find out, and that at which point we're actually introduced to number 99, who is a giant lizard monitor. He's a giant water monitor, and he tells Roko to actually let him out with it, pointing out what's going on with the humans, and how he wants to actually escape. And actually it even tells Roko to actually use it before he's Roko, by the way. I should probably use his actual name. But in any case, number 101 then proceeds to remark that he's not going to let number 99 out, pointing out that number 99 apparently has a habit of attacking people. Case in point, the last time he was out of his cage, he actually wound up attacking the scientist who created him. But number 99 merely remarks that that's just because he's hungry, and that the scientists apparently don't feed him enough, and that if he doesn't eat enough, he wouldn't have to go out and actually attack some people, and remarks that what he would give to actually go and take out his anger on some of the humans and possibly eat a couple of them, which Roko points out that he can't do, and that's a lot more. That points out that they should merely just communicate try and communicate with the humans, and point out that obviously they can, since they can both talk, that talking to humans and trying to work out a common ground is a lot more important. But it's at this point where they're actually interrupted by Trick, who in her cat form exclusively throughout the episode. But we actually do find out that Trick, according to herself, I'm not entirely sure if we can trust the word of a villain. But it's just reiterating my sentiment from my JoJo's review earlier today. But she does remark that she's actually experiment number 12, and that she used to be and live at that facility a long time ago, and points out that if they want to escape, that she can absolutely help them with which both 101 and 99 have mixed feelings about, but Trick merely tells them that if they don't escape, that the humans will actually wind up killing them sooner rather than later. And Ruko then proceeds to flashback within a flashback about how the scientist remarks that they might have to put number 99 down. Pointing out that number 99 is a bit too dangerous and is actually because he's attacking people, and that if he attacks anybody else, they may have to put him down. Which Ruko actually winds up overhearing while they were actually conducting experiments on him. And realizing that the professor actually did say something like that, realizes that there might be some truth in what Trick is actually saying, and it's at this point where Trick actually winds up busting them out of their cages, and number 99 doesn't even wait until he's out of his cage before he starts going on a rampage. He starts bellowing his acid, as we find out later, but he winds up bellowing his stomach acid out and actually winds up dissolving a hole in the wall, which the professor and his assistant actually hear and actually run into the building run into the room to actually figure out what's going on. And upon seeing that number 99 is loose, quickly realize that they need to get him back into his cage, but it's at this point, and it's at that point where they see Trick, and they do indeed confirm that she is indeed Experiment 12. So yeah, that does indeed kind of bust my whole theory about how she may be lying, but apparently not. But upon realizing that she is indeed Experiment 12 is causing problems, they try to immediately get him back into the cage, but number 99 proceeds to just attack them and keep them at bay, and proceeds to go out the hole in the wall. With Ruko trying to chase after him, pointing out that he shouldn't attack humans and that he should try to, again, reiterates his point that he should try and reason with him instead, pointing out that if he keeps attacking humans, that he'll probably eventually just kind of rebuff all the humans that could potentially be nice to him. But number 99 really responds to that sentiment by picking up Ruko and throwing him into the nearby river, and then winds up leaving with Experiment 12 or Trick or whatever you want to call her, and proceeds to go into a port. Which we actually do wind up seeing. They actually wind up going to a shipping port, but it's at this point where it's revealed that at Jack's request, even though Jack actually admits that he's a little bit bored, but at Jack's request, they respond that they decide that the trio actually decide to go fishing, although they point out that Jack doesn't seem to actually care about fishing, even though he was the one who brought it up and suggested it, and B, Jack, by being himself and just being loud and obnoxious, is actually scaring all the fish away, so they can't actually catch anything, which King actually winds up arguing with him over. So, but it's at this point where Queen just kind of laments on the fact that they always do this. At which point she gets presumably a nibble on her line and proceeds to actually wind up trying to pull whatever it is out of the water. And Jack and King actually do wind up helping her and pulling whatever it is out, and they discover Ruko on the end of the line, which confuses them greatly because they have no idea why Roko's in the water. But after a while, they do try to. Jack actually does point this out about how weird it is that Ruko is actually in the water. That was actually in the water in the first place, and Queen kind of yells at him for pointing out that for kind of being a little bit callous, pointing out that obviously Ruko or whatever its name is at this point is obviously been soaking wet, and then proceeds to pull it into a hug and remark that it's a poor thing in the hopes that it'll actually feel better. And eventually Ruko does indeed recover and is immediately becomes very attached to Queen, and then proceeds to respond to that by actually shaking itself off, which covers the trio in water. But it's at this point where Queen points out that Ruko must be hungry and proceeds to offer her some treats from her basket. But upon finding out that Queen only packs things that Ruko can't actually eat, which is mainly chocolate and a couple of other sweets that dogs can't process, decides instead to go after Jack's ear of corn that he's had throughout this entire segment. But Jack winds up running away from him and climbing into the trees, pointing out that Ruko is in no way going to actually get his corn. But Ruko merely responds to that by using his sonic cannon to actually knock Jack out of the tree, and proceeds to actually pick up and start munching on the corn, which everybody proceeds to wonder, and everybody proceeds to wonder where Ruko actually came from. And Jack also tries to get Ruko to do a couple of tricks, pointing out that it seems to be no ordinary dog. And sure enough, in response to Ruko basically being annoyed by Jack's antics, proceeds to kick him in the balls and causes him to collapse from that. With Jack remarking that this clearly is no ordinary dog, but it's at this point where Ruko finally finishes the ear of corn and then proceeds to thank them for the ear of corn and tells them that he's very grateful to them, which confuses them greatly because they really point out that dogs aren't supposed to be able to talk. Meanwhile, Trick and Experiment 99 have actually made it to the port that I mentioned earlier, and it's at this point where as they're trying to abort a ship, Experiment 99 then proceeds to shed its skin and get bigger. And also becomes increasingly more aggressive, which as we find out is actually a design flaw with Experiment 99 in general. As we find out, after the scientists recover, the lead scientist then proceeds to remark that every time it sheds its skin, that every time Experiment 99 sheds its skin, it winds up getting more aggressive and more dangerous, and that it's only a matter of time before it winds up getting a lot bigger and a lot more aggressive and it starts attacking more things, and that they have to actually defeat it before and disarm it and take it down before it winds up hurting more innocent people. But it's at this point where Professor Clover shows up with a smoke bomb and knocks them both out, pointing out that he's there for their data on evolution time, and proceeds to actually break into their facility while they're unconscious to actually steal all of their data, which is implied to have been Trick's entire plan, which to just kind of incite an incident and so that Professor Clover could actually just sneak in and steal all the data. But in any case, shortly after the scene, we find out that we actually do find out that that Jack, King, and Queen actually do find out about Roko's origin story, and Ruko proceeds to explain that he's a scientifically engineered dog from a laboratory, and that also points out that there are others like him. And at which point the trio of them then proceed to actually introduce themselves, at which point Jack points out then proceeds to ask Ruko what their name is, and Ruko merely points out that he just told him their name, pointing out that his name is Experiment 101, which the trio then remark is a little bit sad, so they decide to actually think of a new name, and eventually Jack actually winds up landing on Ruko, which is apparently a pun on the Japanese Japanese word for corn. It is one of the syllables that's in there for corn, and Ruko is happy with the name, but Queen and King were kind of hoping to settle on a different name, but upon seeing how happy it made Ruko, they decide to actually keep the name Ruko. So from this point forward, Ruko is just known as Ruko. But at which point, Queen then proceeds to pull Ruko into a hug, pointing out how she's happy that Ruko now has a proper name, and Ruko is just happy to be getting cuddles from Queen. But it's at this point where they hear a large explosion, and it's at this point where Ruko proceeds to wonder if it is indeed 99. Although he doesn't name drop 99, he just points out, could it be? And then proceeds to leave and go investigate, with the trio following closely behind him. And as Ruko's hunch was right on the money, because Experiment 99 is indeed attacking everything in sight, and in his rampaging and trying to eat humans, with Trick trying and failing to actually rein him in, pointing out that obviously if he attacks too many humans, he's going to cause problems, and they need to get him off the island before it's too late. But it's at this point where Ruko then proceeds to actually think of a strategy, pointing out that they actually do need to figure out a way to actually bring Experiment 99 down, and that he'll actually handle it. But Jack remarks that he'll actually help, because he's actually been perfecting a new technique called Royal Flash, which he remarks is supposed to would actually help in blinds the giant monitor. But that plan completely falls apart when King and Queen merely remark that it doesn't seem like Jack has actually thought the rest of it through, and indeed he hasn't. He just kind of threw that out as an idea. At which point Queen asks Ruko what Experiment 99's weakness is, so that they can actually bring it down, and Ruko points out that Experiment 99's tail is actually his weakness. So they proceed to actually set up a plan of motion to actually kind of lower Experiment 99 into a trap so they can defeat it. And the way they do this is by having King and Queen actually play the role of bait. So they kind of bait Experiment 99 into chasing them, which it works a little bit too well. And Experiment 99 remarks that they're actually very tasty and proceeds to chase after them, which they remark which they then proceed to get scared of and try to actually run through some containers. But Twice actually winds up trapping them in a dead end by dropping one of the containers on them. But or rather, she drops a container to actually trap them into a kind of a U shape so that they can't actually escape. But as Experiment 99 is about to capture them, Ruko and Jack then proceed to confront Experiment 99 and proceed to actually flash him in the eyes with Jack's Royal Flash. But it doesn't wind up working because Jack is an idiot and he winds up turning it around a full 90 degrees, a full 180. So he winds up blinding himself and he winds up falling into the water, and he winds up just kind of blinding himself and not being able to actually attack back. With Experiment 99 really wondering what that was actually supposed to accomplish, but and then proceeds to point, and Jack merely responds that it's actually up to the two of them right now. But in case Spade then tries to actually throw a smoke bomb so that he and Queen can actually wind up escaping again, which does wind up working for a little bit until Twice actually does the same trick from earlier, and it actually does wind up cornering them, and they do wind up getting captured anyway. But it's at this point where Ruko and Jack actually won't manage to catch up, and Ruko tells Experiment 99 that he can't keep attacking humans. And that obviously it's very dangerous for him to actually be attacking humans, and that he really shouldn't do that because obviously he's trying to work out how humans are actually good people, and that he's just known some bad ones. But once again, Experiment 99 responds to that sentiment by knocking Jack and Queen and Ruko into the water with its tail, and proceeds to actually wind up capturing Queen and Jack, and Queen and King. So, at which point Jack and Ruko wind up washing up on a beach somewhere, and Ruko apologizes for the fact that they actually King's friends, Jack's friends actually wind up being captured, and remarks that he'll actually do better to actually rescue them next time, and but also conveniently leaves out the fact that he's going to be rescuing King as well, since obviously Ruko only really cares about Queen, and Jack is quick to point out that he needs to rescue King as well, which Ruko then admits he was very nearsighted of them, but also then proceeds to tell Jack that he needs to stay out of the way, since obviously we've seen how ineffective Jack actually was in a fight. So Ruko tells him that he needs to stay out of the way for his own safety, but Jack merely responds that his friends are in danger, and that he's not going to back down just because Ruko told him to, and that he's actually going to help Ruko actually deal with it, and remarks that as long as they work together, there's nothing they can't accomplish, which is then punctuated by Jack getting hit on the head with a coconut. So yeah, he winds up getting seriously injured because of that. But in any case, as it turns out, Experiment 99 actually wound up bringing King and Queen to an underground cave, and they actually do wind up waking up and actually figures out what actually happened to them. We actually find out that King is that they've actually been pinned to the wall, and by Experiment 99's later revealed to be stomach acid, which apparently has acidity depending on whether or not he actually decides to use that. But they then proceed to point out that they hope that they need to escape before Experiment 99 comes back, and indeed he does, and then proceeds to try and eat them. Which they then try to actually delay by arguing over who's tastier. They try to confuse Experiment 99 by just arguing back and forth about who's actually tastier, which doesn't work. And Experiment 99 remarks that he's actually just going to eat both of them, so it doesn't really matter. Which much to their chagrin, but it's at this point where Trig actually comes in and remarks that she actually has a much better plan for them, which is that they actually need to get Experiment 99 off the island before he becomes too big, or he's going to be trapped there forever. And Experiment 99 points out that he doesn't really care about being big as long as he gets to eat humans. But it's at this point where Trick actually suggests an alternative solution to what he's planning, which is to actually use King and Queen as a bargaining chip, so that they can actually take over the world. Because as Trick points out, they're a lot stronger than humans, and obviously humans would be forced to fear them if they actually wound up taking human hostages. So, but Experiment 99 actually doesn't return that, pointing out that all he wants to do is eat humans, and he plans to actually eat them all, which is a problem because there's billions of humans, and Trick even points this out in the episode, pointing out that Experiment 99 is not going to be able to eat them all because there's, again, billions of humans. There's no way in hell. At which point, Trick just actually deems Experiment 99 a lost cause and proceeds to leave. With him then proceeding to turn his attention back to King and Queen, pointing out that now that Trick is gone, he's going to actually eat them now. But it's at this point where Ruko and Jack actually show up and decide to get into a fight to actually kind of stop Experiment 99 from eating them. And the Ruko then proceeds to respond by actually use her sound cannon and actually blast an attack at Experiment 99, which winds up missing, and Experiment 99 just laughs at them, pointing out that their attack was kind of pointless and missed. But it's at this point where Ruko then proceeds to reiterate her belief that humans are good, pointing out that if Experiment 99 eats all the humans, that he'll miss out on actually meeting some of the good humans, and more to the point that Ruko actually wants to meet some more good humans, and that Experiment 99 is obviously going to get in the way of that. But Experiment 99 then proceeds to actually just point out the hypocrisy of the fact that Roko's actually siding with humans, and also proceeds to call him Experiment 101, which Jack corrects him, pointing out that Experiment 101 is actually Experiment 101's name is actually Ruko, and that he should call him by his name, and it's the name his friends actually wound up giving him. It's at this point where King and Queen have actually managed to free themselves and actually wind up escaping and trying to actually sneak up on Experiment 99, which he picks up on, and also in retaliation for the fact that they're trying to oppose him, he then proceeds to breathe stomach acid on both Jack and Ruko, which presumably kills them at first. And obviously they see that obviously Jack and King and Queen actually freed themselves and saw Jack and Ruko get presumably melted, and kind of lament and kind of take a couple of minutes to actually mourn their friend, but Experiment 99 merely remarks that he's actually not going to melt them, and that he's actually going to eat them raw. But it's at this point where we find out that Jack and Ruko didn't die, because of course they didn't. This is a flashback. Of course they're not dead. In any case, it's at this point where Jack actually reveals the trick that he used to actually survive the stomach acid, which is that acids and bases don't mix. And points out that the coke that he actually used, the coconut water that he got hit with earlier, from the coconut he got hit with earlier, to actually counteract the stomach acid, which is an alkaline substance and therefore kind of nullifies the acidic stomach acid. So, which Jack and Queen, which King and Queen actually remark is actually pretty impressive. But then Ruko then merely points out that Experiment 99 has already lost and has failed to notice what Ruko actually did, which is to actually weaken one of the stalagmites on the ceiling, which is now incredibly loose. And Jack throws one of his cards at it, which causes it to blow up, and proceeds to cut Experiment 99's tail off, which again is revealed to be his weakness, and we find out why here, which is because when Experiment 99 loses its tail, it shrinks back down to the size of a gecko and returns to its normal size. So, yeah, eventually it will presumably regrow its tail, but for the time being, it's teeny tiny. With that, they do wind up actually defeating Experiment 99, and Ruko and Jack then proceed to celebrate by passing out and falling asleep. King and Queen then kind of complain about, pointing out, especially since they later have to carry them. It's at this point, and when they actually wind up carrying them, they actually bring out, and Queen actually notes that that the moon is actually a perfect circle, which parallels what Ruko actually said, what they actually said earlier in the episode, back in the present time, and Ruko actually wakes up enough to actually see the moon and does remark that it is indeed beautiful. Meanwhile, as we find out, Trick actually watched the whole fight and actually stayed to watch the whole thing, and does recognize Jack as the kid she met that one night when they were in his house, and points out that obviously he's still going to very much be a problem for them in the future, and then proceeds to actually report back to first return to her normal form, and then proceeds to report back to Professor Clover, who responds that his theft was actually a success, and we do actually find out that Trick's causing nonsense and causing problems actually did help Professor Clover fulfill his plans for the episode, which is to actually go and steal some data from an old facility in an old experiment room, so that he could actually figure out more about the evolution time. So yeah, we find and that is something that is kind of becoming increasingly obvious. All of Professor Clover's thefts have been time-based so far, which is interesting. And he has lamented that he will actually wind up stealing time itself. So it's clear that his entire plan so far has been to actually steal time itself. He's finding a bunch of different ways to actually succeed in his goal. Obviously, he's been stealing treasures related to time, but also he broke into an old facility to actually steal their data on time on evolution time itself as well. So yeah, it's clearly he's taking proactive measures to actually steal time. I'm still not entirely sure how he's actually planning to do that, but it is interesting. So yeah, that's actually an interesting thing that's actually been coming up in the episode. But then it is revealed that this entire thing was indeed a flashback told by the present day Joker to Hachi. And it's at this point where they actually find out about Ruko and Queen's heist, about how they stole the diamonds, which is being aired by DJ Peacock on the Underground News Network. And he then proceeds to point out how there's a Phantom Thief dog. And we actually do, and at which point the two then proceed to actually leap off the roof after howling at the moon for a little bit, and we actually find out via one last flashback, which I'm kind of doing a little bit out of order, but it's fine. But we then find out that shortly after all the events that happened when they met Ruko, they actually when Silverheart came back, they introduced Ruko to him, and he wound up being so surprised about the fact that Ruko could speak that he threw out his back. But Ruko actually does wind up making a request to actually be trained as a Phantom Thief, and we don't actually find out the results of that deal, but it's implied that Silverheart actually did wind up teaching him all he knows about being a Phantom Thief. So yeah, he wound up becoming a Phantom Thief himself, and yeah, now Ruko is actually working alongside Queen as a fellow Phantom Thief, which is kind of an interesting development to the story. So yeah, that actually does kind of clear up a bit of a misconception about Queen and Ruko. That Ruko is not her assistant, but rather her partner, and is actually helping her as a fellow Phantom Thief, which is kind of neat. This episode is interesting in that it's a giant, it has a giant origin story for Ruko about how he was an experiment in a lab, and also it's revealed that Trick is an experiment in that same lab, and it's possible that there are different experiments that do different things. And now I'm interested as to whether or not Ruko can actually take on a human form as well, considering Trick can do that, and that was an ability she has, but it's possible that it was indeed an exclusive thing to Trick, and I'm not entirely sure but that it could be interesting if it is indeed. But it is interesting. I mean, the main interesting thing is that Professor Clover was actually involved in Roko's past, and that's a recurring thing we're finding out with him. That he was actually involved with Jack's past, and Jack eventually wound up becoming Joker. He was involved with Roko's past and wound up becoming a Phantom Thief alongside Queen, and we find out that he actively lied to Queen and has been kind of manipulating Queen up until recently. So yeah, it's becoming increasingly obvious that Professor Clover is kind of the central antagonist of everything, and is actually kind of indirectly responsible for creating more Phantom Thieves. So yeah, for that's actually kind of interesting in itself, and yeah, I am interested to see what else is actually going on with Professor Clover, because he's interesting. I do like how his story about and what he's actually planning. I do find him interesting, and I am interested to see how much what else the series is actually going to continue revealing about him going forward. But for right now, though, I think I'm going to. That actually does it for today's review of Kaitou Joker. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month, and it does really help me out. So if you guys want to absolutely do that and help support me, by all means, link is down in the description. Just go check that out. In any case, yeah, also be sure to just go check out my Twitch down in the description below if you want to help support me that way. I stream every Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, and the best way to actually see the notifications, other than seeing the video that I occasionally put up here, is to actually just go follow me and see the notification when it goes live. So, yeah, just go do that. Link is down in the description as well. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!